involved with that?
No, he and I haven't ridden together in probably 10 years now, but we used to ride all over the North American continent together.
Yeah, he talks about you fondly.
He likes his kayak now. I think he got too old for holding up two wheels.
Yeah, we go fishing together.
My condolences.
Yeah, his boat's the neatest boat out of all of them.
Huh. Well, he's a good guy. Really is a good asset to Island Pond.
Yeah.
All right, so I see that we are live and on the YouTube. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Vermont State Senate Committee on Institutions. Today is April 6th, 2021. I am Joe Benning, the chair of the Institutions Committee. We also have with us on the committee Senator Mazza from Grand Isle, Senator McCormick from Windsor, Senator Parent from Franklin, and Senator Ingalls from Essex Orleans. We are continuing our conversations with the chair of the House. Is it Corrections and Institutions or Institutions? Okay, Corrections and Institutions Committee, Alice Emmons, who is responsible for the Capitol Bill's current draft. And we are listening to why it was drafted the way that it was in the expected revamp of what they did. Just kidding.
We can't figure it out, so we're still puzzled what you did,
Right.
Well, let me straighten you out then.
So just as a reminder to anybody that may be testifying, we have a live YouTube audience that probably has never been on this channel before. May not be anybody on the channel, but in the event that there is, we like to keep things as simple as possible. And if people start walking off on terms that we all know and love, and the general public probably doesn't know what that means, I may interrupt things and say, what do you mean by X, Y, or Z? And hopefully everybody will be on the same page by the end of the afternoon. So Representative Emmons, you're back. I frankly have forgotten exactly where we left off in our last conversation. And no, that's not an opportunity for you to jump 3/4 of the way through the Capitol Bill discussion. We want to hear all the details.
We're on the last chapter, I think.
No, I remember where we left off.
That's good. Well, the floor is yours. Thanks for coming back.
Okay, you're welcome. So for the record, my name is Representative Alice Emmons, Chair of the House Corrections and Institutions Committee. And before I begin, I just want to let folks know we're still on the floor. On the House side, we're in a little bit of a recess now. We have a bill that there has been a roll call called for it. So I don't anticipate that roll call to be called for almost 45 minutes at the most. Then we do have a bill of my committee up after that. So if I get a text that we're in a roll call, I may have to scoot out and then come back in.
Well, that's good to know, because the last time you did that to us, my committee disappeared right thereafter. So
Yeah, somebody moved to adjourn, and that's it.
Maybe they can have that roll call in 30 minutes.
Maybe, I don't know, we'll break till 1:30 and then it starts up again. So we left off on section 3, which we finished up with the secure residential, the 16-bed, and then the $500,000 for starting the process of replacing the women's correctional facility. And there's language that goes with the 16-bed. That the 16-bed secure residential, this is to replace the trailers out in Middlesex, that it would be 2 8-bed wings and would not include any locked seclusion area. And the facility would not be using any emergency involuntary procedures, which if you're interested, I can go into that. We had allowed those procedures to go forward in a previous Capitol bill 2 years ago. So with this facility now not being able to use that later on in our bill, we have a section that repeals that language that we had in our previous Capitol bill of 2 years ago that allowed those procedures to go through. So
was that actually used in Middlesex?
No, it was not. And part of the reason why it was not used in Middlesex, it wasn't licensed for that. And also there wasn't enough space in those trailers to provide for some of those procedures.
Okay.
So, and then for the replacement of the women's correctional facility, there's $1.5 million over the 2 years. $500,000 FY '22 to get the process started, which allows BGS and DOC to really talk about the program needs for DOC. And we've also put in language that that $500,000 would determine the space and program needs for any state-owned and operated women's reentry facility and correctional facility. Because there's a real understanding that there would also need to be a separate building that would be just for reentry of program for the women. So that's that section, and that's where I left off when I was here before.
That would be inclusive of either a standalone facility or one mega complex of incarcerative.
We didn't get into quite those details. We are waiting for the Hawk report, which is a feasibility study that is, I know Eric from BGS has been working with DOC in the hopes of that presentation being done to both of our committees jointly, and hopefully next week, Tuesday afternoon, possibly.
I believe our respective chiefs of staff have been planning that behind our backs.
Okay.
We've already heard part one of that explanation. The report being issued and the subsequent report from that report is what I understand will be chapter 2, and that's where we're going to join forces.
And what that hopefully will lay out is my understanding at this point, 1 to 6 or 7 different options of how we can go forward to replace some of our facilities.
Okay.
I don't need that. So that's where we are there. And we'll know more after we have our joint meeting with Hawk in terms of maybe solidifying a little bit what direction we move in. Because it's going, if you start looking at replacing one facility, the Chittenden facility, the question is, do you do a standalone like the chair just mentioned? Or do you do it in combination with looking at some of our older facilities that house the males and maybe close those and do more of a campus style? And the question then becomes, do we do it on land that we currently own? Or do we have to go out and purchase land? And those are 2 very different discussions and 2 very different price tags.
So Hawk in this case is HOK. Do you happen to recall what those letters stand for?
I don't, but we have Eric with us. I don't know. Eric.
Who has been referring to them as HOK for so long that I am not sure, but I can look it up. HOK.
They're well renowned in work that they've done across the country in terms of analysis of correctional facilities. So we're sort of waiting for that report next week to really help us in figuring out. This is not an easy discussion or decision. It's not going to be made, I don't think, immediately. I think we need to leave some options open and then have BGS and DOC do some groundwork and then come back to us in January with firmer numbers.
It'll take years to figure out where it can go, because everybody's going to be opposed to it and this and that, and oh my God.
Eric,
Yeah, I mean, you got to work with the community. That's what people
right.
don't realize.
That's the long haul right there. You got to give them the shirt off your back, number one, if you can get it.
Helmuth, Obata, and Kassabaum.
HOK.
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 Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Thank you.
Rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
HOK is okay.
I'll be going to the back bench.
Okay. Some of us have been through siting of facilities,
Suffer
and
long.
it's not a cakewalk as people think it is, even if it's on currently owned land that we currently own. And
I am reminded that the term cakewalk should probably not be used anymore. I made that mistake myself, not even knowing what the origins of that word was. But
same here. I apologize.
in any event, when you go through the process of trying to find a site that's essentially what's going on with the Newbury question of whether we bring the old Woodside elements into Woodbury.
Mhm.
And that obviously takes some delicate maneuvering to have that
We wish it wasn't
conversation.
that long, yeah.
Well, also, the price tag of building a facility is not what it was when we built the last facility, the 350 bed facility in Springfield. That was done in the late 90s and came on board around 2004, 2003, 2004. That was a $27 million project for 350 beds. So now, even looking at a 100-bed facility, you're in the $50 or $60 million range just for construction. So this is a long process. It will be phased in. It's not something that happens overnight. And there's going to need to be a lot of conversations and cohesiveness to go down a certain path, whatever that path may be. And if you purchase land, it's going to be even more cost, because then you get into site work, you can get into water and sewer, get into roads. So this is a big undertaking, and we're saying we've got to start doing it because our facilities are really not appropriate for the needs of corrections or our correctional staff anymore.
I
I know
like
it's
Go ahead,
I know
Corey.
it's been an issue in the past, but the select board in St. Albans town is more open to the discussion of a proposal up here than they have been in the past. I know there's still resistance, but probably 5 years ago when there was the plan for the mega prison, they were a dead no. But the new select board, they've had a long discussion about it, would be open to proposals. I do know that. I work for the town in my day job, so I can speak pretty intimately to that. So
Mhm.
if that comes back, there's a potential there.
Well, between you and the real estate agent on this committee, we may have a couple of competitive forces trying to figure out where to locate the next facility.
Right.
Okay,
We have a facility that you could, redo or whatnot.
And that will all be on the table. That will all be on the table. And that's what this $500,000 can really help to sort out. And I'm looking forward to the Hawk report, because they will be presenting options of do it a standalone, and what the cost is for construction, what the cost is for the operating cost, and then a hybrid of different campus style or different types of facilities. And they will go into the capital construction costs as well as the operating costs, which will help us make that decision easier, I hope.
Okay.
So moving on, section 4 is Commerce and Community Development, and we kept everything as the governor recommended for major maintenance at all of our historic sites. Underwater preserves, I'll get back to that, because the 35,000 is a 10,000 increase. I'll get back to that one. Historic markers, those are the green historic markers that you see. We accepted that, and also the unmarked burial funds. We did that. So the language that we did, of course, was dealing with the Adirondack, and we took quite a bit of testimony, both from Laura Trishman with Historic Preservation, as well as with the Lake Champlain Committee, the Underwater Preserves Maritime, as well as DEC.
Senator Mazza.
Can I ask a question on that one? You put language in there prohibiting the Adirondack from being sunk. And without any money involved, what jurisdiction do we have saying no to something if it doesn't ask any requirements from the state?
There was a lot of concern on my committee about the environmental impact of sinking this metal ship.
But that's under the permitting process and the environmental agency. There's nothing to do with us.
Correct. And at that point, the permit had not been issued.
Okay.
And what we had talked with DEC, and there was some real concerns from the Lake Champlain Committee for that, as well as in conversations with Historic Preservation. Our understanding is even after if DEC allows the permit to go forward, historic preservation will also have an opportunity to do more public hearings. And then make their decision whether to act on it or not.
But
So-
like I said, not that I'm for it or against it, but how can we, if someone goes through the permitting process and does all the permitting and everything, what jurisdiction do we have to say no or yes to that project? That's what I can't figure that one out. Especially if
Well-
we meet all the standards.
Right, well, there was, again, I'm gonna relay, there was a lot of environmental concerns on my committee on that. The testimony, now I got a cat fight going. I gotta go, hang on, I got a cat fight, hang on.
Oh, I think she meant literally a cat fight.
Yes.
Well, that's a first for this committee. Ladies and gentlemen who may be watching live, anything is possible in YouTube.
Let's get
Great.
ready to rumble.
I think it'd be better if we actually saw the fight. It might make like late night.
I got $5 on the tabby.
No, it's the gray one.
Okay.
They're out in the kitchen fighting. We took testimony from the Maritime Museum, and what we were hearing from both the Maritime Museum as well as the supporters, particularly the divers that support the sinking of the Adirondack, is it would open up new sites for scuba divers. And we asked the Maritime Museum Underwater Preserves if there's other preserves there that could be opened up. There's about 100 sites there in the underwater preserves currently. And there's about 2 or 3 that could be opened up. And we said if the whole goal of sinking the Adirondack was to open up a new site, what my committee said, not to sink the Adirondack, we then had language at the top of page 7 of the bill that we are allowing Maritime Museum Underwater Preserves to open up not more than 3 of those sites that they indicated that are currently existing. And we've upped the appropriation by 10,000 for FY22. So those 2 pieces are linked. We're saying, don't sink it, but we're allowing you to open up a couple, 3 more sites that you said are ready to go. And we're giving you $10,000 extra to do that. Because the argument we were hearing is that by sinking the Adirondack, it opens up a site for scuba diving.
But
Reason.
Madam Chair, I go back to the fact that they weren't asking for anything. So how can we put some stumbling blocks if they weren't asking us for anything? That's the concern I have. It doesn't mean that whether it's a ferry boat or whatever else it is, if they don't ask any state assistance or financing, what jurisdiction do we have of saying no? If they meet all the standards. Now, I'm not saying if they don't get the permitting, but that's another issue. If they get denied the permit, but for us, we're not giving any money.
We're not giving any money, but the policy was we did not want the Adirondack to be sunk.
Yeah, but that's
And
not
it's a public trust because we own the land under that water.
But if the Coast Guard said it's fine, environmental said it's fine, every permit is fine, how can you say no?
Well, the legislature has said no to other things that we have permitted as well. It's a legislative intent and
That's
legislative
dangerous.
action.
That's dangerous. That's dangerous. I'll tell you, if we get involved in things that we say no to, that don't ask any assistance, and they go through the process, I believe, like I said, I'm not for it or against it, but they've got to go through a list of permitting, whether it's Act 250, water quality, whatever it is. And if they meet all those standards, what a statement to make that say no, even though you met the standards, you can't do it. So anyway, I had to voice that because it's been on my mind since you folks did it.
So as I understand it, your committee did not know about the environmental impact statement prior to making its decision.
They have just issued, DEC just issued the permit, I believe. That had not been issued at the time we were working on this.
Okay. So just so you know, we had a little bit of a conversation over this already. In fact, we first learned about this about a year ago when they were telling us what they had to do to clean it before anybody could even think about potentially sinking it. The fact that I'm a diver really doesn't have a whole lot to do with this because I've never dove Lake Champlain. Maybe I will someday, maybe not. But I am familiar with the kind of economic impact this would have of people coming from literally around the world to dive on such a unique structure. The administration has no problem with it going forward. They have gotten clearance from the Coast Guard for navigation purposes, and the environmental impact has been ruled to be virtually non-existent. So the optical image of sinking a ship may be something that caused concern on your committee. But the other thing that I had for a problem with that language being inserted is that our committees are not the environmental committees. If Natural Resources and Energy on the Senate side said, no, this can't be done, I would understand why language would be put into something somewhere. I'm not sure if it would be this bill or not, but the upshot is I looked at the ability of the Institutions Committee to say virtually no to something that was outside of its normal jurisdiction. I concede the land is something we may be responsible for underneath the water, but it had no financial impact on us whatsoever. I see it as an economic boon. I'm really nervous about the precedent of a committee that is not normally of the jurisdiction that involves the decision making a very bold and flat out statement. And I come back scratching my head in such a way that this probably will be an issue between our two committees if I'm reading my committee correctly. So that's out there. It's on the table. We'll have to move on and talk about something else. Dick McCormick, you have your hand up.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I know that there are some environmental concerns that have been raised, and I respect Senator Mazza's observation that we are not the Natural Resources Committee and that's really not our jurisdiction. But also, policy is not our jurisdiction. The House Committee has policy powers, but we do not. We just deal with funding. And so I wonder if this is, we have a bicameral legislature. Every bill should have the approval of both houses, of course. But in terms of us undoing a policy decision of the House Committee, I'm not sure we have jurisdiction to do that. To the extent that we do, I would suggest that besides the environmental issues, there's just Representative Emmons used the term public trust. That's no small thing. The lake is a public trust, and the state acting in behalf of the people of Vermont protects that public trust. And just a question of, do we really want to use the lake as, I think some people would see this as using the lake as a junkyard. And it's not a good way to use the lake, including for economic purposes and tourism. If there are people who like to dive, I imagine they would be more excited diving to an historical wreck than something that we'd actually created a wreck so that people could dive on it. There's something Disney World about that. So I'm inclined to respect our colleagues in the other body and leave their language as it is. I may be in a minority on that in this committee, but that's my view.
Well, your concern about the lake becoming a junkyard is a valid one. And I think we should have a conversation about that when we, as a committee, decide what we want to do in reaction to the language. I didn't want to get into a debate with the House about trying to convince them or anything else right now. I just wanted to alert Alice to the fact that we may have some difference of opinion on this particular language. But it's all valid concern, and we will have that conversation.
And that's fair. And also you might want to look at the public trust doctrine. That's what I was referring to, the public trust doctrine.
Okay.
To them. So moving on, the Building Community Grants Program. The governor did increase that funding by $100,000 for each grant and for each fiscal year, and we accepted that for all of them. These grant programs are really important to our local communities, our municipalities, our nonprofit. And some of these grants, they're all capped. The majority of them are capped at $25,000. There's a one-to-one match that the organization has to abide by. And some of these grants range in amounts from $500 to $25,000. There are separate boards that review the applications and make the determination of the awards. And when we establish these building community grants, going on 18 years ago, 16 years ago, we were very clear that we wanted the applications to be simple so the organizations would not have to hire grant writers and that they would be no more than a 2-page application. So these grants do a lot to our local communities and our nonprofits. So we accepted the governor's recommend for each one of those.
Okay.
Agency of Education, this is emergency aid for school construction. $50,000 each year. This is, we do this every year. This is to help the Agency of Ed, but to help our local schools in case they have an emergency situation, which could be a boiler goes, a roof starts leaking. It's not for deferred maintenance. It's to help for those projects that are totally unexpected. And we've always put in around 50,000 for that.
You said 50. I've got 150 for
50,
each fiscal.
they're 50 each year.
Oh, 50 max for each request. I see. Do you happen to know, since this is not a lot of money overall, whether that's been a fund that's been well utilized?
It is, and we asked, I'm trying to recall, we had Secretary French in, and there is a small balance still left in the fund, but it does get expended. For that.
Okay.
We did have Secretary French in. UVM and state colleges. We've always funded help with their major maintenance. UVM, the governor recommended $1 million for FY22 and $1 million for FY23. There were members of the committee that really were looking to help UVM even more, wanted to put in more money. Some other members of the committee did not. They felt it was more important for the state college system. But then there were also members of the committee that felt for the state college system, there was a lot of money moving around within the state college system. So we came upon increasing UVM by $500,000 for each year. So they're 1.5 for FY22 and 1.5 for FY23. State colleges, we kept them at the governor's recommend, $2 million and $2 million. When we took testimony the first time from the state colleges, they were asking for a substantial amount of funds for the infrastructure transformation planning that the governor did not include in his budget. I had a couple members of my committee work with our House Appropriations Committee because there was also general fund transformation money for their programming to see if we could coordinate or making sure we weren't doing it for the same purposes. And also trying to get a handle on where the state college system was going. It came back from the state college system that they said, we're still trying to figure out what to do with our buildings. And they addressed some of those concerns for the tax exempt bonds. They addressed some of those concerns in the appropriations general fund process. And they said, let's hold off on putting anything in for FY22 for the infrastructure transformation. And they would come back in January with a more succinct plan on what they would be doing with their buildings. And so we said, we'll put in 100,000 there in FY23 as a placeholder. So we continue to have this conversation next session when they are a little clearer in how they're going to head forward. And we will have more clarity as well for that. So that's where that 100,000 comes from.
Okay.
A&R, we really didn't do much change there in A&R. The drinking water revolving loans funds, that is our state match for the federal dollars. That's a 5-to-1 match. Those are dollars that go out directly to our communities for their drinking water systems. Dam safety hydrology projects, that's just your regular maintenance and upgrades of your dams that are owned by the Department of Environmental Conservation. The Waterbury Dam, this is a state match for the federal. This is I believe it's I want to say it's a $40 million project, either 24 or 40, I can't remember which, $1 million project. This is the second phase of about 4 or 5 phases to really repair that dam. And the 750,000 is our state match to the feds. The Contaminants of Emerging Concern Special Fund. We started funding this last year. We put in $500,000 last year in FY21 to help. These are mostly schools, small schools that are testing positive for PFAS. And this is to help those schools either do a rehab on their water systems or help them replace their water systems. There's also a few more schools that have come in that would qualify, and there isn't quite enough money left in the fund. And there's about a $500,000 backlog. And we had the folks come in and testify to this, and it was agreed upon to put in $500,000 in FY22 for those schools. For that. Forests and parks, we put in $5 million. We did the rounding down of the $5,075,000, and then for FY23, we put in the 4.4 million instead of the 5 million. There's a lot of money moving around with forests and parks right now with the American Rescue Plan. So we thought, well, in FY23, let's just see where we are. This money is going towards the infrastructure needs of our parks, which could be their roads, it could be bathhouses, campsites, and at least $1 million of that 500 of that 5 million, at least $1 million, 1.5 is for water and sewer within our parks. A lot of piping that you don't think are there within our state parks. So that's where those dollars for major maintenance are going. The Gifford and Groton, these are maintenance facilities for our park system. And this 480,000 is really to upgrade those buildings and the infrastructure for that. That's really the hub of where all the maintenance occurs for all of our state parks. And that 480, we agreed with the governor. 3-acre parcel. This is the stormwater rule for 3 acres. And they are looking within our park system about 325,000 to comply with our 3-acre rule and the permitting for that.
Is there any reason why you advanced the entire amount that you gave them?
Yes, and for both, yes, there is. In that, as you get into the bill later on, we are looking at the ARPA, which is the American Rescue Plan, the federal dollars. There is money there for water and sewer and broadband projects. And we have language that for the Commissioner of Finance and Management to substitute any dollars here in the capital bill with those federal dollars if it's applicable. And this would be one item that would be applicable for that. So we said, let's push it up to FY22 because we have those federal dollars.
All right.
rustic cabins, this is very, very popular within forests and parks. These are cabins that are being built for folks who no longer want to sleep on the ground. They'd rather have a bunk. We put in money last year to start construction on these. That was delayed a little bit because we had language that they would work for the work that Forests and Parks would work with the local tech centers to build them. Because of COVID, everything sort of has slowed down. They still want to do that with last year's appropriation. This $500,000 and $500,000 over the next 2 years, they will not be working with the local tech centers. They'll just be going out with contractors to do this. And so this is a real popular program and we support it. And it does increase visitation to our park system, which is really important because they depend on those revenues to run the whole department and their operation for the parks. Fish and wildlife, general infrastructure, we lumped everything together that was being requested in Forests and Parks. The commissioner has asked us to do this. There is just maintenance of some of their conservation camps, their shooting ranges, their fishing access. The original governor's budget lists them all, and the commissioner asked us just to lump it so he can move money around within those individual projects. So we did that, and we normally do that within our capital budget.
Did they take over the walleyes?
I tried to put walleyes in there. I had a couple members of my committee that didn't want to do it. I worked for it.
Yeah, not very hard.
Oh, I did, let me tell you. Was getting the committee really going.
Whatever Alice wants, Alice gets.
No, not always. Green Mountain Club, they came in. There's a purchase of land for the long trail up around Johnson. And so
Yeah, we had Mike DeBonis in last week. I had to congratulate him for being able to pull 85 grand out of thin air because the governor hadn't recommended anything and
that's right. Well,
you
we
guys
found the
decided
money.
he was entitled.
Okay, we found the money. So that was our A&R section. The Clean Water section, this is a section that is a result of our Clean Water Act. We started a number 3-4 years ago. We were putting in about 24 million each year to address our TMDL. That has now been cut back to about 11 million a year. This breakdown is a recommend from the Clean Water Board. That's how we have it set up. So if you look in FY23, you just see on line 94, the spreadsheet, a lump sum of 11 million. That will be there for FY23. And come January next year, we'll have the recommend from the Clean Water Board in terms how to divvy up that 11 million.
Any federal funds coming down the pike in this category?
Well, there's twofold here. One, if you go to line 87, the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund, this is something we've always funded. This is our match for federal dollars. It's a 5-to-1 match. The 1.5. This is for wastewater sewer systems, combined sewer overflow, those type of projects. That goes directly to our communities. That item there, the 1.5, is our state match for federal dollars. The rest of the projects don't have federal match except maybe something within VHCB, but it depends on what the project is. So again, there's language that we put in the back of the bill about ARPA that for the water and sewer of the 1 billion, we've said that anything within this 11 million, which is really not 11, it's about 9.5 because you've got to cut out the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund. You can't use federal dollars to match federal dollars. So the 1.5 has to stay within the state coffers. So the remaining is about 9.5 million that may be able to be substituted for the ARPA funds. That's our thinking. Because that goes towards water quality, clean water, drinking water, sewers. And we put the language in the back of the bill.
Okay.
The military, that's your basic maintenance, ADA compliance with our armories. For
Yep.
that, 900,000 each year. Public safety, Williston. This is for our new field, station barracks. We used to call them the barracks. This has been in the works for a number of years. This 5.6 will complete the project. It was originally about a $24 million project. A couple years ago, we told BGS and Department of Public Safety to go back to the drawing board. 24 was too expensive. So now it's about $18 million project. It's one of our largest field stations because there is storage there of our public safety equipment. In the wintertime, they store the boats. And in the summertime, they store the snowmobiles. There's also a PSAP there. So this is one of our largest state police field stations. There.
You
Middle,
get snow over there in Williston?
I don't know. Lake effect.
Seems like an odd place to store a bunch of snow machines, but
We got a
Well,
lot
it's in
up
the
there.
summertime. They store them in the summertime.
that means you got to transport them though over to where there's actually snow after that.
We could use the Windsor facility.
We take all your equipment from your end, bring it to Chittenden County and store it for you.
Yeah.
You could get some nice outbuildings at the Windsor facility, correctional facility for storage.
Here you go.
Middlesex, the police barracks there, that's in the same spot where we built our archives, as well as our secure residential. And that station is totally outdated, and they're going to be moving down to Berlin, where the Department of State Libraries building is. And there's some renovations occurring in that building as well as on site. So this $500,000 completes the project.
Okay.
And then we've put in 50,000 FY23 for the academy in Pittsford to really start looking at how are you going to go forward with some of the cottages that need renovations. And it's tied into the governance in terms of fire and police. So they're going to come back next year with a study in terms of how to move forward here for that. Or they're going to come back in FY24 because FY23 is where we put the 50,000.
Okay.
Section 13, Agency of Ag, Eastern State. This is our building down at the Big E. There's a tremendous amount of work that needs to occur in that building to come up to code. The building is open for about 2 weeks out of the year, but we are responsible for it. It's on the Avenue of the States. So each New England state has a building there. And so we've agreed with the governor's recommend of 260,000 and 350,000. Dry hydrant program. This is something we've funded this for, I think, 20 years, 30 years. And the governor put in 125,000 for each year. In testimony with the folks, they said, you know, we don't need the full 100,000 each year is fine. We're finding we're doing more maintenance now that we're catching up on installing enough dry hydrants, that we don't have as much need for that as we do to maintain them. So
We did have that testimony where we learned that it was possible to become saturated with hydrants.
I'm not going down that road.
That wasn't my term initially, but I picked up on it when he said it. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, that is good. Department of Labor, that's the building in Montpelier on Green Mountain Drive. It is for mechanical systems in the building, the HVAC system, life safety needs, and just the minor interior renovations. We wanted to be very, very clear in this line item that we're dealing with the building. We're not dealing with the IT system there or
Right.
anything that involves the operation of the Department of Labor. It's the building. VHCB, we accepted the governor's recommend of 1.8, 1.8. This really goes more towards the conservation, the affordable housing piece. And there is some conservation piece here as well. But the bulk of the conservation piece is done under the clean water section.
Okay.
And digital ortho, we appropriate this every year. This is to do the flyover, to do the photography. And they do a certain quadrant of the state each spring. And then those maps are digitally converted and are available for towns or anyone zoning, listers, anyone using. That
Did
needs.
he actually take you on to show you Vermont Parcel Viewer?
They have in the past, they didn't this time. They
It's quite a
haven't.
fascinating setup.
It is, and they can only fly. I mean, they wouldn't even be able to fly now because you have to make sure that all the snow is gone. So
Yeah,
there's
snow is gone, leaves are down, and clouds are not present.
right. So
It's
you've
only sometime in April, I think he said, it
Right.
was the only time of year that was the
Right.
case.
and sometimes you can't get the person to fly the plane because they're tied up someplace else. That also plays in. It is fascinating. The next section is what we call our reallocations. These are projects that we have funded in the past. Either they were completed and there was a project balance at the end, or the project didn't go forward. So if you go through that, the largest one is on line 141, which is the Windsor Correctional Facility, the property that we own there, the 100 acres. We had put in $700,000 last year for doing renovations in the core building there for forests and parks and fish and wildlife to move in. That was our goal. There are some outbuildings there on that property that are usable for cold storage. There's other outbuildings that really should be torn down. With the world of COVID, Fish and Wildlife, Forests and Parks, BGS started looking at the space, and the cost was really going to be much higher than the 700,000. And then there was also concern after COVID, what would the workforce really look like? Would they need as much office space? So the administration made the decision to say, we're going to put this property on the market and reallocate the 700,000. So we've got language later on in the bill about the property. The committee was not supportive of selling 100 acres at this point. And I'll go into that language in the bill later on. There is justice reinvestment. There was money that we put in last year in FY21 in case we needed some more dollars for the feasibility study that was being done. That's not going to be used, so we're reallocating that. There's quite a bit of money here for the equipment grant pilot project that was with the Department of Labor, where they had the mobile units going to the adult career tech centers. And these are dollars that just have not been used within that grant program. The school safety, $955,000. This grant program and the $588,000. This grant program was a result of the situation in Fairhaven with a young man that wanted to go in, be the active shooter. And there was a grants program that was established quickly for schools to have access to dollars to put in locks on their doors, safety glass, that type of thing. So these are the balances from those grant programs. In VTA, Vermont Telecom Authority, wireless network, we had put in, I think, almost $10 million into the authority for broadband expansion. And this is a balance from that. VTA is no longer in existence, and the money has been sitting there for a few years. So we're reallocating that for a total of 4.1 million, almost 4.2 million. That gets added on to our 123 million bonded capacity for a total of 127,378,000 for our two-year budget.
There was talk about reconstituting the VTA. I don't know where that went anywhere.
I don't think it's all within a broadband bill that passed the House, and the funding for expanding the broadband to those areas of the state that are underserved or limited service in the CUD, which are the communication union districts.
Yep.
They're looking at the federal dollars, the ARPA fund for that. So this is how we've divided up between the two fiscal years, the 127 million plus. for that. So that's our money piece.
Committee, any questions before we move on to policy language?
Just back to UVM. When we have the state college funds that are, well, the state colleges that are suffering so much and UVM's pretty much a washed on money, why would we just didn't take the money, the extra 500,000 or $1 million that was going to UVM, why we wouldn't put them towards state colleges?
Well, the thinking was that there is a lot of money moving around right now for state colleges. You've got a lot of COVID relief money from last year. You've got some ARPA money coming in, general fund money. There's a lot of money moving around. So we were saying, this is just going to major maintenance for our buildings at the state colleges. So one discussion we had with the chancellor is, what are you going to do with your buildings? And any of this money, we hope,
They
are
don't know.
not going to be used in major maintenance to buildings you're going to be selling in a couple of years, because there's some tax implications for that. And they've made the commitment that they would be very judicious in where they expend these major maintenance dollars, because everything is so much in flux about what they're going to do with their buildings. And there's a lot of money moving around in terms of keeping them solvent and working going forward with transforming their programs. So we've got to let that settle. And that's why we didn't increase the capital appropriation.
And they haven't given us a plan yet of what their future is. They
Right.
just can't keep pouring money into them without a plan.
So that was our concern for that.
Other questions? Dick McCormick, you still have your hand up.
Yes, thanks. Madam Chair, you mentioned grants before. These are state-funded grants you're talking about, not ARPA money, is that right?
For the Building Community Grants Program?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's all.
you have
Bob-
you have a bunch of different grants. Okay. I've been contacted by the side judges who were saying that,
I'll
we
get
got
there.
this sort of.
I'm
Are
gonna
you
get
gonna get there?
I'm gonna get there.
I'll
It's
shut
not in
up.
our Building Community Grants Program. I'm gonna get there.
Okay, the
They're
word
covered.
grants, just, okay,
They're covered.
I'll wait till you get them.
As you shift to language, Becky, you're out there somewhere in space. Are you able to pull that up on the screen? You're muted, Beck.
Sorry. I do have another meeting I have to go to, so I don't
Okay.
know if I can send it to, just so that we don't have to switch in between. Is it something that I can send to Denise to put on the screen?
We'll ask her. Oh, Denise,
Yes, you can. Yes, please.
Okay.
All right.
do you have a particular section you want to start with?
I'm gonna start with section 20, because that's the language for the Windsor Correctional Facility land.
Okay.
That's where I'm gonna start. That's on page 21.
Becky is also sending that out as a link in our chat facility if you want to see it on a different screen. So we'll wait and see how Denise does at screen sharing this.
Good luck.
I've never mastered the technique. I can only imagine that Denise's blood pressure right about now is rising considerably.
No,
We
it
also have
isn't.
Catherine as a backup.
Well, the thing is, I don't know where she put it. She didn't send it to me. Well, I'll go look
Denise, it's in the chat box.
in a chat box. Okay. All right. Oh, it's link. Okay. All right. Oh, there it is. So far, so good, folks.
We're counting on you.
Microphones.
Well,
I have total confidence in you.
thank you.
The rest of the committee was saying, I hope she can't find it. That way we end right now.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Oh, Joe, you underestimate us.
Not that bad.
Damn.
So you said you wanted to start with section 20?
Yes, page 21.
Gotta get down here.
It's at the bottom of page 21. Don't you miss being in the committee room and doing this?
Oh, God, yeah.
Me too. Or being in the hallway or seeing each other in the cafeteria and making the deals there, right there.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Alice,
Yeah, whoops, here we go. There we are.
There. I made that smaller. Yeah, section 20. Okay. So you'll have to move this along, Denise, because you're in control.
Okay,
So we were really conflicted about selling a piece of property that's in state ownership, that's 100 acres, that has buildings. And we know there's issues with those buildings. We know that there's been previous reports that have looked at the use of this property. And we also had BGS go out and check with other state entities, agencies, departments for use, and that was a number of years ago. So we have said, let's do another look-see and have new eyes take a look at this. Not have any legislators on this, not have, just have new eyes to take a look at this. So we have established a working group, a study committee, and it is a seven-member working committee, and they're to report back to us come January with options for this property. And one of those options could be to sell it. The membership would be composed of an individual from the town of Windsor that the select board would appoint, the executive director, the local regional planning commission, or the designee, commissioner of BGS, or their designee, because we own the property, secretary of ag, because we don't know if there could be some agricultural opportunities there that we're just not thinking about. Maybe a processing plant, maybe a farming opportunity, cheese making, we're just not sure. Executive director of the VHCB or designee, because maybe there could be some options there with some kind of project that VHCB would help with funding or some of their resources. Secretary of Commerce and Community Development or designee in terms of economic development, and Secretary of Natural Resources, because there's a real natural resource there, because we abut about 800 acres that's in fish and wildlife ownership for a wildlife management area. So we have to make sure that whatever this property is used for, it's not in conflict with that. So we gave direction in terms of what to look at for previous reports that had been done. There was a report done to see if the facility could be used for transitional housing for inmates. There was also another report done for the Agency of Human Services for their major facilities. And then there was a report done just relating to the correctional facility. And so we said, look at those reports and see if there's anything you can glean from that. And then the committee would report back to our committees on December 15th with any of their recommendation for the use of the property. And then we've set up when the meetings, they wouldn't have more than 6 meetings. The executive director of the Regional Planning Commission would be the chair, because we wanted a neutral party for that. We didn't want to have a state, someone connected with the state to be chair. We didn't want someone connected with the town of Windsor. The Regional Planning Commission is more of a neutral body there.
Mount Ascutney.
It used to be the, Dick, help me. It was what was the name of our Regional Planning Commission with Tom Kennedy?
Well, Two Rivers out of Quechee.
No, that was Two Rivers. Southeastern Regional Planning Commission, I think it was. They're based in Heartland.
Guys ever hear how that mountain got its name?
Mount Ascutney?
Yeah.
It was a settlement. Wasn't it a settlement with one of the Indians? 'Cause that's an
No,
Indian name. isn't it?
Farmer John and his wife Martha had a son. They named him Az. Farmer John and Az were up on the mountain hauling down big stones with their
As
ox
cut,
cart.
no, 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 don't.
So Az ended up with a bloody leg and went back home, and Martha yelled out, Father John, what happened? He said,
Az
"I
cut his knee."
Yeah, that's how it happened. Sorry, Tuesday afternoon
That's
humor.
fine. So we wanted a neutral party. I've reached out to the executive director of the Regional Planning Commission, and he's okay with it. He was surprised, but he's okay with it. So that's our goal there, to, get another set of eyes to look at this, see if there's any other options that we just haven't thought about that might work, and be very cognizant of the wildlife management area that's there. So we're not ready to sell it. We want to get another look at this property. I mean, it's hard to let go of a state asset of 100 acres. Section 21, this is language that came from Laura Trishman. This is that depot building that's in New Haven, that's right near the tracks where Amtrak's going to be coming through. That building needs to find a new home, or else it's going to be hit by a train when they start the Amtrak service.
Mr. Chair, for the record, this morning I brought up at Transportation Committee that I'd like to get AOT involved in that too, work together, because I think it's an interest from both sides.
Mhm.
I could do
Yep.
something, so.
So
And
there-
AOT had said that they were knee deep in that project right
Yeah,
now, or at least in
They have a
discussion.
lot of interest, and so I just thought we should work together, if that's all right.
So on line 11
Yep.
of page 24, it's the Secretary of the Agency of Transportation, which owns the land,
Okay.
and the Director of Historic Preservation, which owns the building.
Yeah.
Will determine what the best use is of that building
Oh,
by
good.
relocating.
It's already in there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So nobody's yet toyed with the idea of moving the tracks 4 feet.
No, that's not gonna
West.
happen. That's all welded track. Just put it in there.
And BGS is also involved in this. So that language came from Historic Preservation, working with Transportation, working with BGS.
A train has to go 59 miles an hour, and they will not do that through that tight building. It's only a couple feet apart there.
So Alice, whatever we got to do to save that building and move it, we need to try to work on, because
Mhm.
that's a
Yep.
beautiful building and a wonderful part of Vermont history right there.
Right. So you might really want to look at the language, because if they can't relocate it,
I know.
if it's not physically or financially practicable to relocate, then it could be decommissioned and delisted from the National Register of Historic
My
Places.
hope is AOT, National Preservation of the Trust, everybody get together, state buildings, sit down, have a meeting and figure out what they're gonna do. Give us an answer.
So these other sections are just trying to, the first one, section 22, deals with 133 State Street. There's office space down. I believe it's in the basement that we had originally thought it would go to the Agency of Digital Service. That is not going there anymore. So we had to clarify that from previous capital budgets. The Capital Complex Security Advisory Committee is to sunset this June. So we've extended that another 2 years.
Don't move on just yet. Let's keep that there for a moment. I'm saying this in all seriousness and out of concern, because as I've told you before,
Lost you.
you've lost me.
I got you.
Okay, I'm moving. Everybody else seems to be moving.
Gotcha.
All right, you're back.
The newest gun bill, S30, contains language for this committee to study the Capitol complex and determine whether or not any legislation is necessary. The Capitol complex, as you know, runs from the north bank of the Winooski River up behind the Capitol building into the first level of residential sections to the north of Baldwin Street. And I am not sure if we are reconstituted and this bill passes and the governor signs it. Alice, it may very well be that you're the next chair to take over this conversation.
I think it's you.
Well, at the present, it's me.
I think, doesn't it switch from the biennium? The first year it's the Senate, and then the second year of the biennium is the House. I think that's how it goes. It's not the chair for the 2 years. I think we switch.
Well, in any event, you and I are the only two legislators on it. which
Yeah,
makes
that's true.
You and I, the people who are going to be
Rick.
responsible for drafting this report. And I don't know what it takes to have a report of that kind drafted by the people who are serving on this committee, which is, as you know, all the law enforcement personnel that comes into play here. So I am not confident that this was a well thought out portion of that bill. And whether we have time to meet, whether we have the resources to meet and do what is being requested is very much a concern.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure how things are going to happen on your side of the building, but I guess I'm floating out there the idea that we may have to figure out a way to get more money available for this committee to meet and have an investigation done the way this bill is asking. So I just wanted to red flag that and let you know it's out there.
Yeah, because usually we don't meet more than once or twice a year.
Right.
And last year we didn't meet at all.
Yep.
So this will take at least 6 to 8 meetings, I would assume, if it stays the way it is in the House.
Well, feel free to get the language out of the gun bill, but I'll leave that up to you. Okay.
Okay. The next section is engineering costs. We're just extending that, the sunset, of course, that engineering costs were supposed to go up to the general fund by now, and they, of course, haven't. So we keep extending where it stays in the capital bill. And we've done that.
They gotta take it all out of there completely empty.
So we've extended it to July of 2023.
Okay.
The next section is where we get in, section 25 is where we get into the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan. So there are 2 sections to this, section 25. Uh-oh,
All right.
that's not it. Nope, that's not it. Something else. Sorry.
It was perfect timing, right, committee?
I know, not it. We're gonna finish this because this is the end part.
You know, a little deeper bell tone on there. I would think I was on a ship somewhere.
Yes, sinking is the
Yeah.
Adirondack that's gonna sink. Section 25 and section 26, there's 2 pieces to this ARPA. One is the 1 billion that is for water, sewer, and broadband. Okay, so that's
Okay.
section 25. There's a separate piece that deals with capital infrastructure. Okay?
Yep.
So S25 deals with water and sewer. And this is where we were saying, wherever there's anything like the 3-acre parcel, the clean water section of the bill, that if we could substitute those capital dollars for these federal dollars, we're allowing that to happen. And we're having the Commissioner of Finance and Management determine if any of the FY22 appropriations for the water and sewer infrastructures could be offset. So even within forests and parks, if there's $1.5 million that's going for their water and sewer projects, that might qualify. The 3-acre parcel within BGS and within forests and parks might qualify. And the 9.5 million total in the clean water section might qualify. So it comes up to almost 19 million for that. I think it was around 19 million for that. So that language is in section 25. And it's 15 million. I'm sorry, not 19. It's 15, I believe. And so we have said there will be 15 million in FY22 and also possibly another 15 million in FY23. And whatever of that ARPA money that's not used could go into FY23 for those projects, and vice versa as well. Whatever capital dollars are not used that are covered by ARPA could go into the FY23 budget. So that's what section 25 says. So that's for the 1 billion, water, sewer, broadband. And water and sewer is in our world. So section 26 deals with another part of the American Rescue Plan, which is 113 million for capital infrastructure. That's our world directly. So what we have said there, we're going to split this up where I got to refresh my memory because I haven't seen this for a while. So we're going to split up that 113 million, and that's on the page 28. We're saying 62 million of that could go towards mental health and correctional infrastructure, because we're looking at our secure mental health facility and we're looking at correctional facilities. There's no time limit in expending these $113 million. There's a time limit to the 1 billion that have to be out by 2024. But for the 113, right now, there's no time limit. It has to be connected with COVID. So we're saying of the 113, 62 million would go towards Agency of Human Services for mental health and correctional facilities. 51 million would be allocated to infrastructure for the legislative and judicial branches. And they would have to be COVID related. So for the State House, you've got the HVAC system. For the courthouses, you've got HVAC system in order to get the jury trials back there. So we have said that, again, it's the Commissioner of Finance and Management would submit the recommendations. And in terms of how it gets broken down, it would be the Joint Legislative Management Committee would submit recommendations. This is for the 51 million. And also the court administrator would submit recommendations for how to use these federal funds. So we didn't say that 51 million, how much goes to legislative, how much goes to judicial. We've said Joint Legislative Management Committee would submit recommendations. And then the court administrator on behalf of the courts. Sorry. And then the court administrator would make recommendations on the use of those federal funds.
Now, you haven't tied that language specifically to COVID.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. It's on the page, top of the page 28. In FY22, federal funds provided in the coronavirus capital project fund for necessary capital projects in response to the COVID-19 pandemic shall be designated as follows.
So what happens if the pandemic is over?
Well, this is for FY22. So we're saying for the FY22 federal funds would be used for these. So that might be a question more for our joint fiscal office. They'd have to be designated for use on or before December 15th of this year.
Yeah, my concern, though, when you mentioned jury trials, jury trials are not dependent on HVAC systems being replaced. Jury trials are dependent on people being vaccinated. And we are beyond a situation where HVAC is really going to reach. I'm just toying with having heard both Biden and Phil Scott talk about July 4th as being the likely date of returning to some semblance of normalcy, what happens to these funds if we haven't got any reason to have them there as COVID related anymore?
That's beyond my pay grade. I mean, that would be joint fiscal office. I mean, you know, when we did this language, we knew nothing about July 4th. That only came out today. And there are other situations in our courthouses just to get the courts up and running that's even beyond jury trials.
Yeah, I'm somewhat intimately familiar with our court system.
Mhm.
But
Mr.
sure,
Chair,
Catherine, I see you leaped onto the screen. Hello.
sure. Yes, if I might, I'm just going to read you a section.
Just for the record as to who you are.
Yes, Catherine Benham with the Joint Fiscal Office. I'm going to read you a sentence from the federal law, which the allowable uses were, quote, to remain, funds are available to remain available until expended from making payments to states and other governments to carry out critical capital projects directly enabling work, education, and health monitoring, including remote operations in response to the public health emergency with respect to the coronavirus disease. So I suspect there will still be some responses. Even the July 4th guidance talks about recommending distancing and mask. It's not required, but recommended. So I suspect this will be an ongoing discussion as well nationally with the guidance that comes out on these federal dollars. There's no deadline on them either. So it's something to keep in mind as we move forward, thinking about how to use this money.
Okay. We'll trust you.
So that's how we've divvied up the ARPA, because they do qualify. Those dollars can be used in place of our capital funds. And then that could free up our capital funds down the road for.
Yeah, just to make clear, I don't have any problem spending the money in a design just like this. I just want to make sure that if the rationale behind it is suddenly evaporated,
Mhm.
We don't have to be coming up with silly excuses as to how it's somehow remotely connected. But
Mhm.
I suppose we have lawyers for that.
That's why we have our joint fiscal office and our legislative council, because we
Yeah.
worked with them on this language.
Okay.
Okay. Section 27 and 28 is language that was submitted to us by the House Healthcare Committee that pertains to mental health, bed capacity. It's really looking, if you put in state-owned or operated beds, mental health beds, that you also need to look at resources that are there to support the community mental health system as well. The thinking is you keep building state-owned, state-operated facilities. When they're operating, you're pulling general fund, the Medicaid dollars to operate them. It takes money away from the community system.
Right.
So this language is in pertaining to both of these sections pertain to that there would be a report back in terms of bed needs within our community bed needs, and that report would come back December 15th, where the Department of Mental Health would submit a report to the Healthcare Committee and our committees of institution and the Health and Welfare Committee on the Senate side. So it goes into quite a bit of detail, and this was worked on by our Healthcare Committee.
Okay.
Okay. Section 29 on page 31 is the repeal of what I mentioned, the emergency involuntary procedure. And those would have allowed possible seclusion, possible physical restraints, and possible medication. So the Healthcare Committee is saying this new 16-bed secure residential would not be allowed to use emergency involuntary procedures. So we have to go back to our capital bill of 2 years ago that put in language that allowed those procedures to be used.
Yep.
This repeals it.
Okay.
And then section 30 is work that started last year with our regional planning commissions for DEC, when there's money going out to municipalities for planning advance for projects within their public water systems or clean water projects, that part of those planning dollars would go towards the local regional planning commissions to help them, because they participate a lot with these smaller communities in their planning. Of work. They provide a lot of technical assistance to the rural communities. And I believe you had Tasha Wallace and Eric Platt in to discuss this, and we did as well. So we've put in the language. Last year they wanted to do this. We said there were some issues, go figure it out. They figured it out. They've come back. They're all in agreement with this language. So we've put that in, and that's the bill. And the vote of the committee was 11-0-0.
All we have to do is stamp it.
That's right.
You still haven't got that walleye money in there. We gotta do
No, I
something.
tried. I really tried.
She left that out there. She knew what she was gonna do.
No, I wanted to put it in. I had a couple members that
Well-
said, "No, we don't want to play that game."
Alice and I gotta sit down and talk.
Yeah, we gotta sit and talk.
All right. Any questions, committee?
No,
I hope you all memorized those sections that I'm going to assign you to, so you can
it's a
spit all that back
If
out
you
again.
can, I'll help you with them.
wonderful bill.
I'm sure.
All right, Representative Emmons, thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Thank you.
Committee, that's all I've got today. I've got to talk some logistics with Denise, but Denise, I
Yeah.
guess at this point you can take us off of YouTube.
All right.